Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast on Saturday Glory YouTube channel here. I'm Mark Givler. Got Chip Minnick with me here as always. We're back with more schedule breakdowns of all the Big Ten teams. We are on to maybe one of the more interesting teams to watch in the country this year, and that is Michigan. They are certainly at the heart of the college football news cycle right now. And I think there's still a lot of questions left to be answered about them, both on and off the field, which will probably make this breakdown even harder than maybe some of the other programs that we're going to talk about. But it's nonetheless going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see certainly what the NCAA does when they do it and what impact, if any, it has on the coaching staffs, the rosters, etc. So we're doing this a little bit blind in some regards, just not knowing if there will be any further action that would, maybe cause coaches or something like that to be suspended or anything. But we don't fully know what the quarterback situation is going to be like either. But we'll start there. Where do you sit on this? Are you like, let Bryce Underwood play, or are you kind of let's kind of bring him on slowly, don't throw him to the wolves right away? Where do you sit on Bryce Underwood?
I think the best move that Michigan can make, and this is just somebody, the way that I look at it is like, if he earns the position and outplays Mikey Keene and is deserving of being the starter, then that's fine. I feel like I'm going back to my old man time machine here. 20 years ago, Michigan, they started a true freshman back in 2005 with Chad Henne as a true freshman. So it's not as though that they haven't done this before. And Bryce Underwood, the hype and the talent. I mean, Mark, probably far better than most people in terms of, I think the way that you refer to him is like he's a freak. I mean, he's just athletically, he's that talented. If he outperforms Mikey Keene, I say, all right, go for it, because the fans are going to be clamoring for it. But by the same token, I think there is something to be said if you anticipate, and I'm just thinking from the perspective of a Michigan football coach, if you anticipate that he's not ready, and by putting him in, I'm not suggesting, I know we're going to look at the schedule here momentarily. I'm not suggesting the first game that he couldn't play and play extremely well. But if you anticipate, hey, that second week going on the road to Oklahoma, if you think that that's going to just shell him and possibly not shatter his confidence, but completely, hurt his confidence in the for the foreseeable future, maybe there is something to be said about Mikey Keene. So I'm just of the mindset, like, play it out. If Underwood outperforms Keene, let him start. But be prepared for some bumpy patches, because, I mean, even as a true freshman with all that talent, he's going to have some moments that are going to have you shaking your head.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, and I think the argument even changes now, because you talk about the money that's been rumored to have been thrown his way, and we don't need to exaggerate numbers. Maybe it's 10 million, maybe it's not. I don't know. What we do know is the market for a 5-star quarterback is 7 figures. That's the market. So you're paying him some millions of dollars. Again, is it 3 or 4 million? Is it 10 million? Who cares? But you're making this young man a millionaire. So with that said, you're not getting a lot of ROI if he's on the bench. That has changed my thing. Like, I used to be a guy that, like, okay, let's redshirt the kid. Let's, but like, if you're going to pay this guy millions of dollars, don't you have to start kind of seeing what you have there and start getting some return on that investment? You alluded to the fans. That's the other thing, is this is going to be, for Ohio State people or even just hardcore Big Ten people who will remember this, this is going to be Todd Beckman and Terrell Pryor, where nothing Todd Beckman or Mikey Keene in this situation does is good enough. And even if he is the better option right now, the what if of Underwood is going to dominate the fan mind. And so you're not exactly putting Keene in a great situation by throwing him out there either. So I don't know what the right answer is here. I know it's probably a key factor to like how their season's going to go is handling it properly. But he's got to play early. He's got to play in that opener like early, not like, oh, we're up 50-0. Let's put in Bryce Underwood. Like, no, like by the beginning of the second quarter, he needs to have a series or two. And maybe go from there, see what you have. But there's no easy answer here, in my opinion. I lean toward playing him if it's close. If it's not close, like if Mikey Keene is just way better, then you're just going to have to tell the fans to relax and just trust you that Mikey Keene's just more ready right now. But if it is close, you probably have to go with Underwood just for some of those reasons. And I praised this move in the offseason. I liked Michigan bringing in Mikey Keene. I liked them bringing in a veteran to sort of provide some insurance against having to play Bryce Underwood. But again, with the millions of dollars, the way the fan behavior is going to be, like I said, I dealt with this. Todd Beckman, 1 year, led Ohio State to the national championship game, was extremely efficient in doing so. And the next year, every incomplete pass, it was put Terrell Pryor in the game, And Terrell Pryor was in no way ready to be a quarterback. He was able to take the snap and run around and do some things with his legs, but he was in no way ready to like play the position the way it needs to be played. And that didn't matter to anybody. They just wanted to see the 5-star freak out there early. And that's going to be the same thing that's going to happen to Michigan this year. So that said, I think Underwood's a better passer, more polished passer than Terrell Pryor was coming out. So he may be more ready mentally to handle that. I don't know. We'll see. Going to be a big thing. Let's look at the schedule. New Mexico at home, at Oklahoma, Central Michigan, at Nebraska, bye week, Wisconsin home. And I'm reading this for the people who are listening to this. I know it's probably very annoying if you're on video, but I'm reading this for the people. Like I realized doing some of these in the past, like we're not reading the entire schedule. So if you're listening to this on audio, like how are you following along? So I'll try and go quickly through this. Bye week after week 4, which is the at Nebraska game, home Wisconsin, at USC, home Washington, at Michigan State, home Purdue, bye, at Northwestern, at Maryland, home Ohio State. Chip, those early road games against Oklahoma and Nebraska would seem to tell us a lot about, is this going to be a team that competes for the Big Ten championship, or is this going to be a team fighting, kind of for bowl eligibility, or like what, or something like what are we? I really think those first 2 road games are going to be big.
Oh, certainly. I think the fact that the Oklahoma game, as you said, Mark, the fact, it's the second game of the season at night. And I realize we're talking about Michigan, but I want to point out the fact that I know that you and I are on the same page. I mean, Oklahoma, that's a program right there. That's also, you're talking about, coaches under the heavy scrutiny and under the microscope. The fact that it's a night game on ABC is going to be must see TV, so to speak. And then the Nebraska game, the fans, they've been, I'm sure, eagerly anticipating this game ever since a few years ago when Michigan took them behind the woodshed and just completely wiped them out in Lincoln. So I think the Nebraska fans, the fact that it's a 3:30 kickoff, that's going to be huge. So Michigan realistically could be sitting at 2-2 going into their first bye week of the season before the end of September.
Yeah, and looking at this whole thing top to bottom, they got a good draw.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for my money, they're playing the 3 worst teams in the Big Ten.
Yes.
Purdue, Northwestern, and Maryland, I think, are the bottom tier of the Big Ten this year. They're getting all 3 of them. There's teams that don't get any of them. There's teams that only get 1 of them. They're getting all 3 of those schools, and they're getting them 3 games in a row with a bye in there too. Like, so if they can survive those first, 6-7 games, they're going to be in really good shape. The way the schedules balance out, but again, tough road games early. Oklahoma, Nebraska, USC. Wisconsin and Washington at home are competitive, at Michigan State. I mean, this really feels like a 7-game season almost. It feels like kind of like those first 6-7 games, they're either going to come out like if they are 6-1 out of the gates, very good chance they're playing in the Big Ten championship game, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But they could also be 4-3. But they could also be 4-3, and then it's like, oh, like where are we going here?
Right. Yeah. I'm not seeing them getting off to that hot of a start. And I realize, people are going to say, Minnick, you're an Ohio State fan, and which I'm not going to deny that. I try to be as objective as I possibly can when it comes to, and it's not easy, especially when it comes to Michigan. But I will say this much, that I'm going to take a minor step back in the sense that, we started off talking about the quarterback position. Let's not ignore the fact that Michigan last year, their offense ranked 129th in the country. I mean, it was often very difficult to watch. I mean, to your point, which I completely agree with, like the Todd Beckman, Terrell Pryor issue, that was, as you accurately stated, Ohio State fans were clamoring for a quarterback change after Beckman was part of a help lead that team to the brink of a national championship. Now, granted, it wasn't all his fault, but like the fact that the fans were clamoring for that, I'm just going to kind of like the opposite side of that is, okay, Michigan fans last year, the quarterback position was just anything but even remotely close to, anything that you would anticipate at a program as prestigious as Michigan. So getting back to the schedule, that's why I said, in my humble estimation, that second week game, Brent Venables, who's again, he's on the hot seat. The Oklahoma coaching staff, they need to deliver and again, it's a non-conference game, but again, it's on national television, second week of the season. Nothing could make the Oklahoma coaches happier than to have a very talented but inexperienced, highly touted freshman quarterback trying to negotiate what full well is going to be a very loud, and let's just, I'm gonna borrow some of Kevin Noon's kind of logic, well lubricated, fan base by that time of the day. So that's why I think if we're looking at it as objectively as you possibly can, I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but if I was a betting man, I would be leaning more for 2-2 going into that first bye week. And like you said, like possibly the idea of like possibly being like 4-3 after 7 games, or more towards that than 6-1.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And yeah, I'm sure they would like to kind of have their schedules reversed. I mean, maybe they won't want to kick off with Ohio State, but I would think they would rather have like that back half of their schedule be the front half of their schedule. Because then you just play Bryce and you let them work it out against those Purdue's and Northwesterns of the world, and you still come out with wins and you get them ready for Oklahoma and Nebraska at USC later in the year. But the other end of this, though, I guess the argument for a Mikey Keene, if you do think Keene's even just a little bit better, is there's no tanking in college football. You don't lose for draft position. Like, if you lose in college football, you just get fired and kids transfer and you lose recruits. You don't get the number 1 pick in the draft. You don't get to go out and get the number 1 high school player in the country if you go 1-11. Sorry, Purdue fans, but I just don't know what the answer is going to be there, because you are like, if Keene gets you through those first 7 games, but it's not great, you're 4-3. And then you put Bryce in, people are going to be like, well, now why are you putting Bryce in? Why didn't you do this before we lost 3 games? And why'd you let it get to this point? So they're kind of they're almost in a no-win situation up front. And then you hope that if you're Sharon Moore, you hope that whatever decision you make in hindsight turns out to be like, hey, I told you so. Because at the time he does these decisions early in the season, they're going to be scrutinized. There's going to be a lot of people who disagree with whatever he does. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I think I would just play him. I think I would. Because I think what you can do is, I think you play him against New Mexico. I think you start him. You start him against New Mexico. You let him go. Get a little bit of data on what you have there. Keep it simple for them. Don't show Oklahoma anything weird. Just pretty vanilla. You're going to beat New Mexico. To me, it's easier if he goes on the road than week 2 in Oklahoma and the moment is just too big for him. I think it's much easier at that point to put in the veteran on several levels. One, Mikey Keene is a seasoned veteran. Was he like 30 years old? I'm joking, but like he's been around. Like he'll be able to step into that. He knows the deal. He'll be able to do that. It'll satisfy the people who just have to have Bryce out there. If he goes out and throws a couple picks, well, no one's going to be saying, "Oh, keep him in, coach." Then that allows you to bring in Mikey Keene if there's a lack of performance there from Underwood, versus like the musical chairs thing where you just play them both all the time, or versus like, if Mikey Keene goes out there and plays poorly, what now? You're going to put in the freshman now? Your veteran's not getting it done. So I think it's a much easier proposition to be like, yeah, this isn't working right now with Bryce in the first half of the Oklahoma game. Let's see if the veteran triggers us a little bit here. That's just my thought, though. So let's do our best case, worst case, Chip. What do you think are best case, worst case scenarios for Michigan? And let's do this with what we know right now. Let's not try and project, well, I think Sharon Moore is going to get more games, or or this might. Right. Let's just whatever is fact right now. And then what if something else happens between now and like September 1st, we can, or August 30th, I guess, you and I can record another Michigan podcast and be like, hey, these things have happened. Let's revisit this. We'll do that if things change, but let's only deal with like fact and what we know right now in terms of giving your best and worst case scenarios.
Okay. Well, I think you were pretty accurate with your the idea of like a 6-1 start. I definitely think looking at the schedule, and I realize, for those of you that aren't watching this visually, I would say that my gut instinct is telling me that Michigan will lose at Oklahoma in week 2. And I would not be surprised if they lost to Nebraska in week 4 or at USC on October 11th. So that would, that's where, like, when we're talking about like 4-3, I'm also not going to put the realm out of the realm of possibility for Jonathan Smith and Michigan State to catch Michigan on October 25th when they go to have their in-state rivalry game against the Spartans, simply because Michigan State played Michigan tough last year on the road, and this time the Wolverines have to go to East Lansing. So I would say, I'm thinking like that this team, it just something about it. It's like, yeah, could they possibly run the table up until the time that they play Ohio State? Sure. I would say that that's probably like the very best case, scenario, but I just don't see it. I really do think that this team is more of an 8-4, 9-3. I would say, like that's probably like the floor is probably, at probably around 7 wins, I would say, is kind of just with the talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Even though they lost a lot of talent, that team, that's what Michigan football is built around, is strong, tough defense. That the running game on the offensive side of the ball is going to work out, especially with Justice Haynes and the fact that they've got Jordan Marshall, who's starting to emerge. So I think Michigan, if you're a Michigan football fan, you want to be contending for the Big Ten championship. But I think realistically, you're probably, like around that 8-win, 9-win threshold.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. My floor here is going to be a little bit higher than I thought kind of before I really sat down and looked at the schedule. I think the schedule is pretty favorable for them to not like completely like have a disastrous year. By Michigan standards, of course, not by just anybody's standards, but like, a 6-win year, I think is kind of off the table. Like they're going to beat New Mexico. They're going to beat Central Michigan. They're going to beat Purdue. They're going to beat Northwestern. They're going to beat Maryland. I'd be surprised if they didn't beat Wisconsin at home coming off a bye week.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, yes, at Oklahoma, at Nebraska, at USC, at Michigan State, tough road games. It's not going to go 0-4. Not going to lose all those games, are they? I mean, they may even be favored in one or two of those. I don't think they're going to lose all of them. So, like, I look at, I mean, I'm going to say 7-5 is my basement.
Mm-hmm.
But even that, I would be a little bit surprised if they didn't win 8.
Right.
But I'll say 7-5. Like, the quarterback situation's a mess. Like, you know, you still don't get enough out of your receiving core, whatever it might be. I really like their running backs. I've watched Jordan Marshall since his sophomore year of high school. I think he's a stud. I've watched Justice Haynes since his sophomore year of high school. I think he's a stud. So I think they've got good backs. They'll have good lines. Not as good as last year, certainly on defense, but they've still got guys, and like their quarterback play can't be worse. It can't be. Even if it's a struggling true freshman, their quarterback play cannot be worse. So, you know, like I said, I'm going to give myself a little bit of an out and say 7-5, but boy, I think 7-5 even would be awfully low. Ceiling, I'm going to say 10-2. If you start a true freshman at quarterback, you're going to lose a game or two just off of him playing bad once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's that. You know, it could be Oklahoma, it could be Nebraska, USC, certainly could be Ohio State. But, you know, at the same token, am I going to just guarantee they lose to Ohio State at the end of the year? Why would I do that after the last 5 years?
Exactly.
Up there, like, yeah, Ohio State's probably, in my estimation, is going to be probably a double-digit favorite. Certainly close to it. They're going to be at least a touchdown favorite in that game. Ohio State will be, but we can't give Ohio State that game,
right?
Or you know, because last year happened. If there's ever a year to give the game to Ohio State or to anybody in this rivalry, it would have been last year to give it to Ohio State. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason for them losing that to that team and for that team beating that Ohio State team. So, you know, but 10-2, they either lose one of the early road games, again, probably Oklahoma would be my guess, and then lose to Ohio State at the end of the year, or they lose 2 early road games, stabilize things, quarterback play improves, and they get Ohio State again against all odds or whatever. But I do think probably 8-4, 9-3 is probably the range that we're likely going to fall into. But again, assessing best, worst case, I think worst case is 7 wins. Best case is probably 10. And that 10 could even include a Big Ten championship appearance, because if they lose to Oklahoma, there's nothing to say they couldn't go 8-1 in league play with that schedule. Will they? I don't know. But I mean, this is not one of the harder Big Ten conference schedules we've looked at. So it's a pretty favorable schedule, in my opinion. So Chip, any parting thoughts on the Wolverines?
Just that this team, don't underestimate them. I mean, Mark, you just referenced the last year's Ohio State win by Michigan. I mean, it seemed inexplicable at the time, and as the months have passed, it's still that is one of those games that's always going to be shocking as an Ohio State fan that took place. So my point is that it's not beyond the realm of possibility for Michigan to have a much better season than we're right now giving them, predicting for them.
Yeah, this is one that, again, I've done some of these where it's like my best case and worst case are like 2 games apart. Like this could go 3-4. Like I think there's a 3 to 4 game window here. I just think there's so many directions this could go for them based on how those early road games play out. But yep. And then even last year, talk about the LSU game last year, but then like the Alabama game, none of their guys play. All of Alabama's guys play, and they win that game. It's like, what?
Exactly.
So it's really hard. They're a hard team to predict anyway, let alone with kind of some of the other stuff going on. So we'll see. Well, like I said, we will if there's some type of seismic shift in what their roster or coaching staff makeup is going to look like between now and the start of the season, we'll revisit this and be like, hey, okay, now that we know certain things, let's talk about this again. But I think we did as fair of a job as possible and just kind of went right off the facts we know as of today as we record this on June 30th, 2025. So thanks everyone for watching and listening, and stay tuned for more of our Big Ten schedule breakdowns.